acclimated to. Trey, what's good with you, fam?
What's up, my man? How you been?
Man, all is well, man. Just trying to make it like you, big money.
Oh. Look, man. I'm just a regular old dude, brother.
I feel that.
I just got finished cleaning up clay dough and washing dishes. So I'm an average Joe right now.
Man, I was on the same wave earlier, bro.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I'm actually trying to decipher what's going on with this with this season with the Ivy League and everything, man. It's
I was about to say, what's it looking like so far?
I'll say this with so many schools doing so many different things. I know Harvard's, they're not having anybody on campus for the entire duration of the school year. I know that Princeton and Yale are going to have up to 40 and 50% capacity. Brown has switched to trimesters, so they're only going to have certain percentage for 2 out of the 3 trimesters. So with that being said, athletics, it looks like it's going to be pretty hard. Obviously for the fall, I'm worried more about the spring. But in that aspect, they're going to have some people on campus in order for athletics to go. It's too cumbersome of an issue to have people not on campus.
Nah, that makes sense.
We'll see.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
So we'll know around noon tomorrow. My wife already told me, she's like, listen, if you don't have a season, we're taking the kids out of daycare and you're staying home. I was like, damn. So.
Is that what you own, JR? Is that what he owns?
Hey guys, we're getting ready to start here in about another 2 or 3 minutes. I'm gonna give some extra time for some people to get in. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good. Doing great.
We're good, Coach.
Good. It's good.
Good, man.
We'll give it another couple minutes. I'll go ahead and tell everybody. I mean, most of you guys already been in here, but go ahead and leave your chat information in the chat box. Go ahead and leave your chat information in the chat box. We got 2 excellent coaches, Division I head coaches, up and comers, speaking tonight. We'll go ahead and get started. I know some other coaches will be trickling in as time goes on. Tonight we've got 2 great young Division I up and coming head coaches. Bashir Mason, head coach at Wagner, and Amir Abdur-Rahim of Kennesaw State. We'll do it as we normally do. We'll go ahead and allow themselves to present themselves, tell their story, and then we'll go from there to Q&A. So our first speaker tonight will be Bashir Mason. He's been the head coach at Wagner, going on 8 years. When he was hired, he was the youngest head coach in Division I, and he's done a great job since he's been there. He's led Wagner to two NEC regular season championships, and as well as being named Coach of the Year twice in the NEC. Bashir, I was gonna let Big Petey introduce you, but Big Petey is not in here, so I went ahead and gave a little quick introduction of you, but I'll go ahead and allow you to give your presentation, and the show is yours.
Hey, Ryan, man, I appreciate it, one, for having me. And two, I was a little bit nervous coming on this, but I see a lot of familiar faces, Serge, Vince, a bunch of guys that I know on here. So definitely feel a lot more comfortable. Lamar, I won't forget you, my staff. And I like the intro, me being named the youngest Division I head coach in the country, because my hairline right now don't really say that. So the hairline is pushed back from all of this coaching I've been doing. But again, happy to be here with y'all guys. Share my journey, my story to becoming the youngest Division I head coach. And just throughout it, man, there's probably three things that'll be highlighted. And that's just really hard work, being all in, right, and relationships. Those are probably the three things that have helped me in my career, and probably helped me get to where I am today. And the hard work really is not a highlight of myself, and I won't go back too far, but I do want to highlight just my background a little bit and where I'm from. Being born and raised in Jersey City, New Jersey, just a underprivileged, poverty-stricken, drug-infested neighborhood. On top of that, growing up in a single-parent home. My mom, our relationship was, high and by, and not in a bad way, right? She raised the hell out of me, did an unbelievable job, but my mom worked 3 jobs when I was growing up to make sure that myself and my 2 sisters, we had everything that we needed, right? So she was a home health aide during the day. She worked at the post office overnight, and during weekends, she volunteered at the private school that I went to so that the tuition could be reduced so that she could afford it. So when I say hard work, that's what I saw every single day, when I was growing up as a kid. And every day of my life, I feel indebted to that, right? I can't be lazy. I cannot not work hard because of what I seen my mom go through. So that's all a part of my story and my journey. But pretty much fast forward to my high school playing days at St. Benedict's Prep for Danny Hurley, right? When I talk about being all in relationships, St. Benedict's, top 5 program in the country when I was there, never losing more than 2 games, 2 state championships, right? I was always an extension of my coaching staff. I was always bought into everything whatever the program was about, toughness, hard work, whatever it was, I believed in that wholeheartedly, and I represented that. And that took me on to Drexel University, where I played for Bruiser Flint. Had a pretty good, playing career. Won Defensive Player of the Year as a freshman. One of the only freshmen to ever, start for a tough, hard-nosed Bruiser Flint. And, I always tell people with that, and I talk about relationships, I decided to go play at Drexel over VCU, George Mason, and East Carolina. And during my time at Drexel, George Mason went on a Final Four run. And after I graduated a couple years later, obviously VCU became what they became. And, they made runs in the NCAA tournament, all of that, multiple years in a row. And I always tell people that, if you look at me from a basketball perspective in my playing career, people will probably say, you made a mistake as a player. You should have went to one of those schools and you would have made it to the Final Four. And I always tell people, maybe you're right. I don't know if I made the best basketball decision, but I definitely made the best people decision, right? Guys that were going to be there for me, before, during and after college. And that's staying true to today, which has also helped me in my coaching career. But at Drexel, I had a really good career. Like most guys, I kicked my shit into gear. Once my 4 years was done, when it was time for me to become a pro, I probably worked harder that summer than I worked my entire 4 years at Drexel, right? Putting in 3 a days, lifting, running, shooting, the whole deal, just getting prepared to play professionally. And, as I'm going through the process, signed with an agent, the whole deal, I got offered multiple different, contracts to go play professionally overseas. And every contract that was presented to me, I made an excuse about, why I didn't, why it wasn't good enough for me. Not enough money, didn't like the country, heard bad things about the coach, the team, the situation. As a 22, 23-year-old, I didn't understand at the time why I was, coming up with these ideas. I know now as a 35, 36-year-old that it wasn't in my deck of cards to actually go play professionally overseas. It's just not who I am, not the person I am to move my life over to Europe or to another country to play basketball. But going through the process of deciding what I wanted to do, I reached out to Danny Hurley, my high school coach at the time, former high school coach, who he was more than that for me. We had a conversation about, what I would do, if I decided that I did not want to coach or didn't want to play. And, I kind of halfway in, halfway out said, man, I might be interested in coaching. And, he actually was like, he caught lightning in the bottle when I said it. He's like, man, I'm actually happy you said that. I've always viewed you as a coach. And, if you decide you don't want to play, let's talk about, coaching. And the conversation continued. And I circled back to it. And I just said, man, if I decide not to play, it might not be a bad situation. Me coming back to coach at St. Benedict's with you, learning the game and you're figuring this whole thing out. And he said, well, if you would be coming back here to St. Benedict's to coach with me, you wouldn't necessarily be coaching with me. You would be the head coach for our prep school team, and I would coach the varsity team. So, I never coached a day in my life. So when he said that, it was just like, man, I'm not prepared to be a head coach. I can come back there and be an assistant coach and figure out how to coach and do all of these different things. And when I said that, his response to me was, I'm not sure if it was calculated, something he thought about. We still haven't had that conversation till today, but, he was disappointed in my response. He said, man, I've never viewed you as an assistant. I've always viewed you as a top guy. I don't know what happened to you at Drexel, but something changed you. So we ended up hanging up the phone. And, when I got off the phone, I was hot. I was boiling. Like, man, this dude think I'm soft. You think I'm afraid to coach? I'm not going to. So I'm thinking about it. I called him back, a couple of weeks later and was like, listen, I'm not officially telling you I'm going to take that opportunity, but my heart, that situation sounded right to me. So scared to death, know nothing about coaching, never coaching a day in my life. Also, the view that I have of St. Benedict's, again, this is a top 5 program in the country. When I was a player there, teammates with J.R. Smith, the whole deal, right? When I was there as a student, the soccer program was number 1 in the nation. In 4 years, they lost 1 game. And when they lost that game, the next day school was canceled. So my perception and my vision of St. Benedict's and what it would be to coach there had me all screwed up in my head. Just like, man, you taking on a lot. But, I toughed it out. I decided I was going to take on that opportunity. I was excited about it. I went back. had a pretty good team. 6 guys on the team that ended up being Division I players. But we started off that season, we lost our first 2 games, 0-2. After we lost our first game to Tyreek Evans, I had no idea who he was. I was in college. I didn't really follow high school basketball that way, but they came into our gym and they beat us, and I was devastated. Went off on the team, went crazy. Guys are kind of looking at me like, this guy's going to be in the NBA in another year, so you're going crazy on us about this. But I didn't care. We had about a week in between our next game. Right, we went to showcase at Seton Hall, playing against Winchendon. It was another powerhouse prep school program, and we had about a week to prepare. We go into that game. I'm thinking we're prepared, we're ready. I'm the head coach of St. Benedict's prep team, and we're not going to lose 2 games in a row. And for sure, we lost that game from start to finish. Those guys jumped out on us, and man, I went from devastated to just like, you feel like everybody in the country is looking at you. You're the worst coach in the world. And, I had no coach's voice. I had no real feel of how to command the game other than actually being a point guard, being out there on the court, right, running the show. And one of the best things that happened for me at that time, Danny and our teams used to practice together. And it was his voice during practice until we started scrimmaging. And this was around Christmas break. And his team, was doing all these Nike events. So they were traveling for about a month. And I didn't have a game for about 3 weeks to a month. And I got a chance to actually coach the team. And I didn't know what I was doing then. I probably still don't know what I'm doing now. But I really got those guys just to buy into being tough, being defenders, right? Caring about each other, ball movement, and not caring about stats, but just caring about winning. And if we won, everything would take care of itself. And we just really worked on that stuff for about a month. And, Danny's team eventually came back from, all of the showcases and things that they were playing in. And when they came back, they were the number 1 team in the country at that time. Samardo Samuels and Greg Echenike, Scott Machado, some of the guys that played, high-level Division I ball. And, when he came back, we ended up scrimmaging. And we scrimmaged and we dogged those guys. We dogged them. Danny kicked those guys out of the gym, was going crazy on them. And he came over to me and was like, what the fuck were y'all guys doing when I left? It's not the same team. And I just kind of smirked, didn't say anything. Because, again, you still don't want to step on the big dog toes. But I knew at that moment we had something. And we went on to not lose another game that season. We won a state championship. And, again, I had 6 guys that went and played Division I ball. And, that was not the dream job for me. Never really wanted to get in coaching, never saw myself really as a coach. And that wasn't the glitz and glamour of what, people think coaching is. Like I lived in a dorm room with, high school students, high school kids, high school boys. I hung out with those guys every single day. But that was fun. I got a chance to learn, to be around guys, to be who I was, and develop relationships and not try to be anything that I wasn't. And, back in the dorm, I'm watching a national championship game at the time between Memphis and Kansas, with Derrick Rose and Mario Chalmers makes the shot. They push the game into overtime. And Chuck Martin was an assistant coach at Drexel who recruited me to go to Drexel. And he was on the Memphis staff now at that time. They end up losing the game. I text him at the end of the game just to say, hey, man, it was good to see you on that stage. And, I know it was unfortunate loss, but y'all guys will get back there. And, not expecting to hear anything back from him, just lost the biggest game you could possibly lose. I text him in 2 minutes. He texts me back, and the text is probably verbatim. Don't worry about that shit. I'm going to call you tomorrow. I got something I want to talk to you about. And I'm not thinking anything of it. I know at the time they were recruiting some of the guys that were on the high school team. So I figured he wanted my help with one of the kids. So he called me the next day and he asked me what I thought about becoming a college coach. Told him it's something I never thought about. Why are you asking? And he said, well, I'm probably going to be named the head coach at Marist College. And if I get the job, I would want you to come be an assistant coach for me. And again, never thinking about it, never thinking about being a high school coach or a college coach. It's just the relationships that I've had with people that had kind of pulled me in a direction to becoming, one of the youngest Division I head coaches. So I eventually decided to become an assistant coach for Chuck Martin at Marist College. We were inheriting a really bad program, and like most coaches, I thought I had the special sauce. I know Chuck probably thought the same thing about himself. We were going to go up here. We were going to sprinkle some of that magic potion on these guys. We were going to turn this whole thing around and be really, really successful. And, our first year, coaching at Marist, we were 11-21. And it was a increase in wins from what the program had did in the past. And, but 11-21 is 11-21. And, college coaching was tricky. It was a lot different than high school, right? Where, you could manipulate certain things, you could manage certain things. At the college level, if you ain't putting the work in, if you ain't grinding, right? If you ain't going above and beyond, you're not just out talented anybody, right? And we figured that out right away. And again, there's going to be a common thing with me saying, I didn't know what I was doing. I probably still don't know what I'm doing today, right? But I was myself during that time at Marist. I was a 23, 24-year-old, not trying to masquerade as, a 35-year-old, 40-year-old guy who had experience and knew the business inside and out, right? My approach at Marist was to be who I was, right? I was young enough to relate to the guys on the team, right? I just got done playing college ball 2 years ago, so I was still in really good shape. My idea of working out was getting in the gym and getting shots up, working on my game. So anytime coach told me to get in practice, which was every single day, right, I jumped out there and I knew what the guys bitched and complained about. So I used those moments to show them to just really build trust and confidence in the coaching staff. Right, everything that the guys moaned and groaned about that wouldn't work, that couldn't work, or we couldn't defend this way, we can't play offense that way, I made it look easy purposely. And I would talk to the guys about it. And in that way, I built relationships with those guys where they respected me, they trusted me. And, it just went that way. Chuck, Coach Martin really relied on me in that way to have a pulse of the team and figure out what was going on and what we needed to be better. And, we recruited that summer, and I thought we recruited some really good players. And, we just knew we were going to be successful. We were 11-21 my first year there. My second year, when you don't think it can get worse, it actually did. My second year there, we were 1-29. I'll never forget it. We won our 13th game of the season. We beat Manhattan. Rashim, I'm not sure if you was on that staff. I don't think so. I was with Slice. We were 1-29, and I was broken. I've been a part of winning programs my entire life as a player. My one stint really as a high school coach, I had a tremendous amount of success, and now I'm facing 2 losing seasons in a row and being probably the worst Division I college in the country. Danny and I had communicated throughout the season, and he knew my frustrations, and he would call me to vent about, his frustrations and ask me to talk to some of the guys on the team, just because I was familiar with the program throughout. But at the end of the year, we were playing phone tag with each other. He was calling me and I was calling him, and we would miss each other. And we finally got on the phone, and it was him calling me, and I was just like, man, coach, I'm happy you calling me. And he was like, well, I'm happy I caught you. And I'm like, wow, what's going on? So, well, I'm probably going to be named the head coach at Wagner. And if I get the job, I want you to come back and coach with me. And that was probably one of the toughest situations I've ever been in. And I don't necessarily know if I handled it right. I think I did. But I told Danny, this is a difficult situation. I got, a relationship with Chuck. I got a relationship with you. And it's not like, Kansas or Kentucky or whoever, St. Bonaventure's is calling me. This is Wagner. This is a comparable job, comparable league. And the last thing you would want, or I would want, is for Chuck to feel like, man, this dude don't believe in me. He's jumping ship because he don't believe in me. So, that was a heavy, heavy burden that came, that became an easy decision real quickly. And I would never say to chase money in the profession of coaching, right? Because, you're getting paid millions of dollars or whatever you're getting paid, right? It's really never enough in college coaching with everything that we got to deal with. But, Danny asked me what I was making at Marist. I told him, and he said, well, I'll double your salary. So he doubled my salary, got me 15 minutes away from where I grew up, 20 minutes away from where I grew up. And when I had that conversation with Chuck, for him, it was a no-brainer. If he's going to pay you double than what I'm paying you, I understand that situation completely. So at Wagner, with Danny, we inherited a program that was 5-26, 4 games better than the program that I was at in Marist. But we coached those dudes hard, man. We really coached these guys hard. And Danny and Bobby and myself, we were the guys on that staff. And Danny was a high school coach. Bobby at the time was now at Arizona State. He hadn't been in coaching, so those guys were relying on me heavily that first summer to really kind of pinpoint the guys that we need to be recruiting that would help us, or the guys that were available in April that we could probably bring in to try to stabilize the program. And the 4 guys that we ended up bringing in that first year, one is the second all-time leading scorer in school history. One is the all-time leading shot block in school history. Our point guard, Kenny Ortiz, was Defensive Player of the Year 3 times, which has never been done at the Division I level. And another kid from Florida who's probably had the best career over in Europe out of all 4 of these guys. But so I won't say that I was the lead recruiter. I've learned right now in recruiting, right, you're only as good as the guys that are around you. And if I didn't have that Hurley name probably tattooed or associated with the guys that I was recruiting, we probably wouldn't have been able to land those guys. But at that time, I thought I was the shit. I thought I was getting things done. So year 1, we go 13-17, which was a 7 or 8 game improvement than the team that we inherited. But we got those guys playing hard, believing, just being tough, just trying to punk every team that we played against. And then year 2, returning pretty much the entire team, we went 25-6 and got upset. LIU won 3 championships in a row. We lost to those guys in the semifinals. And, just the way college basketball worked, man, Danny was offered, or his name was in the mix for a bunch of different jobs. And, he was tight to the vest about that. I was young in the business at that time. I didn't necessarily know what was happening. I was just a soldier on the front line. And it was really whatever he was going to do, I was rocking and rolling with, no questions asked. But my relationships with the players, right? Those guys are reaching out to me. Hey, we hearing these things about coach, what's happening, what's going on. And I didn't know. I was really just screenshotting the messages that players were sending me and, sending it to coach. That was my way of kind of asking too, like, what's going on? We hearing these things. And then the conversation started to change with the players. It was more so, all right, so, if coach is going to take one of these jobs, what are you going to do? And, I'm going to be honest with those guys, really based off of the relationships I had. And I was young at the time. I didn't know anything different. It was, if coach is going to leave, I got to go with him. And there was devastation. There was devastation with those guys just via text. Some guys would call me. So I think it was a Monday or Tuesday. Danny eventually met with the team and told them, hey, listen, I've been offered the head coaching job at the University of Rhode Island. you know, they offered me a shitload of money basically. And, you know, I've been a high school coach for 9 years, poor my whole life. I got to take advantage of this opportunity, which the guys on the team understood. I understood, and it was, that was a tough day. But 2 days later, I got a call from the athletic director at Wagner, and at the time I was taking graduate classes, so I lived like a 5 minutes walk from campus. I'd be on campus either until my class started, or I would walk home and then walk back to campus. So he called me, asked me if I was still around, and if we could meet up. Which I'm just thinking at the time again, no big deal. Yeah, I can meet up. The players must be doing crazy shit on campus. He know that I'm around, so he want my help with it. So I meet him. We have a conversation, and I didn't figure it out till later in the conversation that this was kind of like an interview. But I started to get a little bit annoyed with some of the questions that I was being asked. I knew at the time, they were really pushing hard for Bobby to take over as head coach. And, he didn't want it. He was going to go with his brother. He was just getting his feet wet in coaching. So he wanted to figure it out a little bit more. So I knew at that time they wanted to hire him. And the questions I was getting asked was kind of like, what was your role with the program? What are the guys that you recruited? What was your day to day? What were you doing? And so I started to be a little bit of a dick. I just answered the questions by saying me and Bobby did the same things every day. So they like be more specific. Bobby recruited and I recruited. Give us a little bit more than that. I don't know. Bobby got shots up with guys. I got shots up with guys. And so the AD finally said to me, "Do you know what happened today?" I said, "No, I'm not sure. What happened?" He's like, "Well, all 13 players on the team came to my office and went to the president's office in a real professional way. They wore their travel suits and their polos and told us that if we didn't do something to keep you here, they would all transfer." And again, I had been on Craigslist at my apartment at home looking for apartments in Kingston, Rhode Island. In my mind, I was already gone. I never even thought about becoming a head coach at Wagner. And when he said that, I just thought these guys are crazy. I'm at the table. I start texting some of these guys like, "Yo, man, what are y'all guys doing?" So the conversation then changed a little bit of, gauging my interest and wanting to know if I was capable. So I let those guys know I'd for sure be interested, but I would have to talk to Danny about it. And really in my gut, I didn't know. We just turned a program around, a NEC program around in 2 years. And, I was all bought into what we were doing. And there was no doubt in my mind that if we were going to go to Rhode Island, which Danny eventually did, we were probably going to turn that program around and do the same, probably bounce on to something bigger and better. So I told him, the athletic director, give me a couple of days to think about if I want my name to be involved or associated with the job. And I needed some indication from him, right, that I would have a real chance at the job. It wouldn't be me putting my name out there for this job and not getting it, because that could be detrimental to my progression in coaching, considering, I was an assistant coach for a program that just won 25, 26 games. And now I'm the assistant coach, didn't get the job. What's wrong with him? Why didn't they hire him? There must be an issue. From that conversation, he made me feel good about it. So I called Danny. This is 10 o'clock at night. I called him and told him the conversation. And he shot it down immediately and said what I was thinking. Man, like, don't stay there. We probably did as best that we could do there. And we didn't make it to the NCAA tournament. Come here to Rhode Island and, we could have the same success, and you'll probably have a good chance of getting this. And for me, just being all in the relationships that I have with people, that was it. When he said that, I was going to call the athletic director and tell him I'm not interested. But Danny called me back at maybe an hour later. He was like, "Man, I'm just sitting here. I'm just thinking about this. It would be crazy for you not to go after the job, right? You got an opportunity to become the youngest Division I head coach in the country. You got head coaching experience. Like, who am I to kind of tell you not to do that or not to go after that opportunity. So I called or texted the athletic director that night and let him know that I'd be interested. So put my name in the hat. I interviewed on a Friday, which was a process, a 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. deal. And, had to wait through the weekend to figure out, what the results was going to be. And I got the phone call on Sunday morning being offered the job and accepting the job. And from there, man, it's just been a whirlwind. It's been a whirlwind. Everything I thought about coaching, everything I thought about recruiting, running the program, everything that I thought I knew, sitting over 2 seats over from Danny and from Chuck, I figured out quickly, I don't know anything. I didn't know anything. And, but I knew who I was as a person. I knew who I was as a player. And, I wanted my teams, or I want my teams to always be a reflection of me. So, if you ever come watch us practice, you watch us play, shit is pure chaos, right? No fouls, no out of bounds, guys hooting and hollering from the time that they walk in to stretch, to the time that they leave out. And my staff, some of those guys are on the call right now, and they'll tell you they probably dislike me a lot because one of my theories, or one of my sayings, is you can't coach it. If you can't do it, you can't coach it. So my staff is fully invested in practice. These guys take bumps, bruises, they get nicked up. But that's one of the things that helped me as a coach. And, I always felt like it was a good thing for our program. So I've had a crazy run in my journey to becoming one of the youngest Division I head coaches in the country. I'm not a motivational speaker, right? And I know, a lot of guys who hear my story sometimes walk away like, that's going to be me. 4 years as an assistant coach at the college level, I'm becoming a head coach, and then I'm going to take off. I hit the lottery, man. I hit the lottery, right? I put myself in, I think, good positions by working hard, being all in and invested as a player with the guys that I played for. And then those relationships really just paid dividends for me to becoming, a head coach. So I don't know if I kind of answered everything or gave guys a clear picture, or if you want to know anything more in detail, don't hold back. Fire away with any questions y'all guys might have.
Yo, what's going on? This is Jordan Ingram. Good to see you, man. I hadn't seen you in a minute.
What's up, fella?
Not much, man. No, I just wanted to check in. Oh, my fault, guys. I know we played each other in college. I'm a post-grad coach Covenant College Prep. My question was, you were talking about a lot of recruiting you did on the road. Like, I just want to just pick up what are some things that you kind of did, like, or get some recruits that from you. What were some things you kind of did on the trails, like that you kind of did?
I mean, it's little things. I would say one of the biggest things is that I never tried to be something that I wasn't, right? So I'm young enough to still relate to the guys that I recruit. So I play that angle, not play that angle, but I'm just myself, just relating to guys. But for the parents, you also got to show them that, although I'm a young, Black guy that's relatable to your son, right? I'm probably going to be the toughest guy he's ever played for. I come from a background of discipline, hard work, holding guys accountable. And now you're playing for a guy that can relate to you, so you can't bullshit him either, which is also really difficult. So one of my biggest things, and a lot of guys on the call probably notice, is that I always try to wear the latest sneakers out when I'm out recruiting. So when those kids can't see the names that's across all of our chests, they remember the coach walking in the gym with the hottest sneakers on.
Coach, John Mandeldove, assistant coach here at the Winchendon School.
I don't want to talk to those guys.
Hey, man, we got dogs coming in this year, man. Talk to us about how you as far as the culture change, a little bit of the culture change and like, the offensive sets and defensive sets that you probably did versus what Danny and Bobby and the rest of the gang did prior to you taking over the job.
So, you know what, that's actually been one of my biggest struggles and one of my setbacks, and it's probably taken me, 5 years to find my own coaching identity. Like when I first took over, and this is because I played for Danny in high school, now I coach with him. There was a formula for success, really just getting the guys to play hard. And that's what I believed in. So that's just what I went with. And that's who I am to the core of me. But the game has changed and evolved so much. That's still at the core of me, playing hard and being a defensive-minded team. But from an offensive standpoint, we change year to year with that, just, evaluating the program throughout the summer, seeing the 13 different pieces that you have and trying to come up with a picture that will work for that group. So, I don't try to make 13 guys fit into my system. I try to tailor a system to them. But, the defense and, just playing tough, that never changed. The trade-off is you want to shoot from half court. I don't give a shit. You want to throw alley-oops, I don't care. You turn the ball over, you throw around the back passes, I don't care. Just run back on defense and get stops.
Thank you.
Coach, how you doing? Brandon Chappelle from Lamar University.
What's up, man?
What's going on? Kind of want to see if you could kind of talk about a little bit that process when you went in for that interview. You mentioned before, you was just yourself. You was young in the business, but when you went through that long 12-hour process, like how was that? Can you kind of go in detail a little bit, like as far as preparation and just kind of how that process was?
Yeah, man. So I actually, that's a good question. I actually skimmed through this. So I spoke to Danny at 10, 11 o'clock at night, and he gave the thumbs up on it. My next phone call, after I texted AD and he texted me back, hey, we're going to do the interview on Friday. My next phone call or text was to my college coach, Bruiser Flint, at Drexel. And I told him, listen, man, I'm going to interview for this for this Wagner job on Friday. And he was like, all right, man, come down. So I can help you through the process. I got in my car that night and drove from New York to Philly. For my girlfriend at the time, I stayed overnight with her. And I met Brew in the office at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I was there with him, putting together everything from 8 in the morning till about 8 o'clock at night. And it went by so quick, everything. I didn't have a chance to get a haircut, shape up, nothing, because I was on the next day. And my process was probably a lot different than a lot of guys' experience. So I went in and I was prepared, and I had, this booklet put together, had everything that I wanted to touch on and hit on. And it was weird because a lot of the people that interviewed me, I had relationships with already for the last 2 years, right? So some of them wanted to just really skip past that and now, talk about what my vision was for the program. But talk about it, not be so professional about it and go through the booklet and the handout and everything that I had. But for me, I'm on eggshells. This is my moment and I want to be, as detailed as possible. I want to present everything. And it was just, it was really just it was a mind fuck, because I didn't know if I was hitting home runs with everybody that I had spoken to. I didn't know what the process was going to be, when I met up with the AD at night. So I asked, when we got back together, I said, so where do we go from here? You need to, meet with everybody and figure out what they thought. And what I didn't know was that everybody that I met with, he was pretty much just circling behind me, in the office or a phone call. And it was either getting a thumb up or a thumb down. So he let me know on that Friday, hey, you're in good position. Just don't do anything crazy over the weekend. But it was different. It was different because I had already been there for 2 years.
Got you. Appreciate that, man. And I played for Mike Dean, man. Him and Kenyon Spears, man. They
Okay,
say good things about the Bro, man, they fans, man.
Yeah, what's his name? Kenyon's a good dude. I haven't had a chance to meet Mike Dean, but I hear he's one of the funniest guys on earth.
Wow, man. Wow. Hilarious, but he's all in, man. Good dude.
Yeah.
Bashir, what's going on, man? Amir Abdur-Rahim down at Kennesaw State.
What's up,
It was a great. I hate having to follow that, but you talked about, when you went back to St. Benedict's to coach the prep team, right? So my question is this: like, you think back to that time, and then when you take over at Wagner, what were some things that you were able to kind of draw back on from your first experience as a head coach to when you took over at Wagner to kind of help you through it?
Another good question. So I talked about when I was at St. Benedict's, those first 2 games we were 0-2, and we had been practicing with the varsity team, and it was pretty much just Danny's voice until we started to scrimmage. And then when Danny left, when his team went on the road for about a month, I developed my coach's voice, and I really took control over the identity of our program. That's really what I relied on in that moment. I know I don't have the last name Hurley, one, and I knew I had to change my voice with the guys. The program that we had already had, and I had really, really tight-knit relationships with those guys, which is why they went to battle for me. Also put us in a compromising situation because you kind of got to stiff arm that relationship a little bit because it was a little bit too intimate for a head coach to have with his players. But my biggest thing was just my voice and then the work, right? Just went at it 1,000 miles an hour. So guys didn't really have a chance to think, oh man, coach is being a little bit different. He was this way with us when he was an assistant. Now he's that way. We just tried to go hard every single day. And again, just take over the program with my voice and my go hard. But it was very similar to what Danny was doing. So, but it was my voice.
Appreciate it, man.
Bosh, Vince Robinson, how's it going, bro?
What's up, big OG?
What's up with you?
Everything
Hey,
good?
how was the transition from being an assistant with Boob and those guys, and then you taking over as the head coach? Was it was it different for you being the assistant? Because, when Danny was there, you was pretty much the buffer between Boob and Danny and all those guys. Now you go from being the buffer to you being the head guy. How was that transition for you?
It was tough, man. Honestly, it was really, really tough. And I wish I was a little bit older and handled it differently. Now, in my first 2 years with those guys, we won 38 games and we had a lot of success. But if I was a little bit older, I would have been able to manipulate the situation or make it better. Again, my relationship with Boob was, he didn't stay on campus. He was, going home every day, and I was picking him up in the morning, bringing him to campus, and not knowing how did this kid get back home, at night. So now I'm the head coach, and I can't do that. I can't do that, and I also don't want to know about that either. I wouldn't say that caused friction, but the relationship wasn't as tight as it was prior to, and I was so engulfed with now becoming a head coach. You're replacing that last name Hurley, right? You're coming off of winning 25 games, right? You're talking about, when you lose one game, you feel like shit, this thing is over. Just that pressure alone on itself. So I was a maniac. And if I was a little bit older, a little bit more mature, I could have probably we could have probably won a championship because I think those guys were that good.
Hey, Bosh, you hear me?
Yeah.
What's going on? It's Serge, man.
What's up, fella?
How you doing, man?
I'm good.
I was one that actually watched your press conference when you first got the job. That was monumental and motivating to me. So talk to me, what was that experience like, that first press conference?
Really, man, I was just really floating, to be honest. Like I watched I watched so many press conferences after that or before mine, and I look up there and like, man, I was up there for 30 minutes. I gave a Hall of Fame speech from start to finish, and I watched guys after me. They up there for like 2 or 3 minutes, just introducing themselves and happy and excited to be there. But that moment was important for me, man. There was so many people that had helped me get to that point in life. I had to thank everybody. And again, it was, I was just floating. I don't necessarily know how much I prepared for it. It was literally, name the head coach, and it's like the NBA guys when they walk across that stage and they shake, the commissioner's hand. They getting pushed this way, that way, the next way, and you just going with it.
Hey, Coach Mason, Justin Bailey with Pitt State, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good. You got an awesome story. Question for you. So, doing a lot of these Zoom meetings and, excuse me, talking to mentors, when you go into an interview process, they always tell you to always have, your staff in mind. And for you, it's kind of last minute, it's kind of thrown in the fire in a sense. Did you kind of bump everybody up? Did you have some people in mind you brought on with you? How was that process putting your staff together?
So I won't say made a mistake, but I think he's actually on here. My guy, Dwayne Lee, he should have probably been an assistant coach for me at the time, but he ended up being a GA. But it just kind of worked out my staff. I never really hired a guy who I didn't have a previous relationship with, other than Shane Doyle, who's now family. So Mike Babel, who's now with the Brooklyn Nets G League team. It's funny, he was at Auburn at the time as director of operations, and he was calling me, asking me if Danny was getting a head coaching job at Rhode Island, because he's from Massachusetts, so he wanted to get back to the Northeast, and he was asking me, hey, who's going? Can you talk to Danny to try to get me involved? And he was the director of operations at Drexel where I played, so we had a relationship. We would always kind of be in contact, but he was calling me about getting to Rhode Island. And then when I got the head coaching job, he ended up, being my top assistant, my associate head coach. And Marquise Webb, who was also on my staff at the time, he and I played with each other since 9th grade, AAU ball together. He was always, a good dude, represented the right way. I've always had, really good feelings about him, and he and I always communicated. And we were in contact at that time about something else. And again, I ended up being named the head coach, and it was just almost a normal thing. Like, man, I got this opportunity, and would you be interested? And without me offering the job or talking to Marquise about money, finances, anything, he didn't care what position it was. He was like, I'm in with you. I wanna rock with you. So I didn't have the staff in mind per se, but it was all guys that I had previous relationships with.
Gotcha. Appreciate that.
Bosh, what's going on?
What's up, fella?
Nothing much. Just wanted to touch base. Obviously, you and I know each other, respect everything that you've done there. What do you think your role is in this basketball world in terms of giving back to some of the younger guys, whether it be AAU, high school guys like yourself, support staff? Because, a lot of times guys are scared to approach head coaches. So, I mean, obviously I know you're very approachable, but what would you say your role is for those young guys on this Zoom?
Man. So, I want to answer that two ways. One, for the guys on this Zoom, and not excluding anybody, everybody's included, but minorities in particular, man, there's a heavy burden, there's a hard hat that I wear, every single day from day one of this thing, right? Winning games, representing the right way, walking, talking, looking the right way, because there's that fear of, not, being successful. And it's bigger than me. Forget my success. If I'm not doing things the right way, I'm closing a door on an opportunity for one of y'all guys. And I take that, serious, really, really serious, whether I got relationships with y'all guys or not. I know that my success or my failure is ultimately going to open a door for guys on this call or close it. And again, I take that super serious, which is probably, caused me to live my life a little bit in the box, just trying to do things the right way. But, it's worth the cost of admission. And secondly, with these young men that we recruit and that play for me, man, this thing is bigger than basketball. That's the relationship that I've had with everybody that I've played for. And, we're just using that orange ball and that 9450 to prepare these guys to go out into the real world. And everything that we do on the court, it translates. It translates to the real world. And when you get the guys to understand that part of it, right, that everything that we're doing translates to the real world and they buy into it, I think you become more successful as a team, more successful as a program.
I got a question, man. I just want to know, that's the beach house?
It's my guy.
Hey, man,
yeah.
I love what it is you're doing, man. I'm not going to say much. Just wanted to know if that was the beach house, and I see you got all your assistants on it. You made it mandatory for them to be on tonight?
You can't coach it. You can't do if you can't do it, you can't coach it.
Nah, it's all good, man. We talk all the time, man. So I'm proud of you, bro. You
I appreciate it, man.
Coach Mason, it's Adam Hood. I'm an assistant at UTSA. I had a question. Again, my big analytics guy. Just looking at your, profile. Your teams are constantly in one of the top offensive rebounding teams. You had a 5-year span where you're top 50 in the country as far as offensive rebound percentage. Is that something that you guys preach? Is that something that you guys really work on, because it's kind of a staple of what you've been able to do?
Yeah, something that we work on every single day. I think the one thing that goes hand in hand with that, right? Analytics, top 5 or whatever, top 15 in the nation in offensive rebounding. We've also been top 5 in the nation in fouls, right? So our practices, again, are crazy. We get guys to go after the ball. And it's as simple as that. When a shot goes up, if you got a better chance of getting it if you're going in the direction of it. And then, we practice rebounding drills like everybody else, but I think ours are, get a little bit ridiculous sometimes, but it's just a mindset that we're trying to get into our guys. And again, when they buy into it, we go from, 3 or 4 rebounding drills within our practice to maybe 1 or 2, because myself and our staff, we know, hey man, they got it. We don't need to work on that type of stuff no more.
Appreciate it.
Got any more questions?
Hey, Bashir, Lamar here, man. What's going on?
What's up, Lamar?
Hey, look, I want you to explain to these guys, some of these guys who, you prepare all your life. You didn't. You just got to hand it to you about head coaching. But you named the head coach. You have your press conference. Talk about the next 3 months, like how it just becomes a whirlwind. Because I don't think guys understand. They get ready for a job, but then you got to actually do the job.
Yeah, and honestly, man, I don't know if there's any preparation for it. It's just crazy where everything about the program now becomes your responsibility, right? So I'm named the head coach, right? We had a the press conference. We did maybe 1 or 2 individual workouts, which I was used to doing that stuff, but I'm in the airport going to the Final Four. And I get a call from our athletic trainer. Hey, so-and-so failed the drug test. These are, things that I never had to answer to before. I never got those phone calls. And it was just really, now I'm just talking to the guys once the deed was done or whatever the case may be. But now I'm on the forefront of this and making decisions, what is supposed to happen. And, you know, it's tough. It's tough. It beats you up for a while. And, it don't slow down for a long, long time. It took me years for the game of basketball and coaching to slow down for me. And I'm probably still not the best coach, but you know, it was moving fast. It was moving real fast every single day.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Coach Mason, Evans Davis, Alcorn State. Hope all is well up your way.
I appreciate that, Coach.
You just mentioned that when you it sped up, everything was just going fast for you. I had the fortunate pleasure of being blessed with an opportunity, and I felt that exact same way. My question to you is, how did you balance it? How did you, or did you ever make it slow down?
So I'm really conflicted right now with that, right? So my first 3 or 4 years, right, we were one of the top offensive rebounding teams in the country, one of the best field goal percentage defense and rebounding teams. We led our conference in field goal percentage defense every year. And, you know, for me, in hindsight and with the kids that we're coaching today, I was a madman. I was crazy. I got my coaching staff, everybody's moving 1,000 miles an hour. We're one of the top, we're number one in the country in fouls every year. But that was who we were. That's how I wanted to play. That was my identity. That was our identity. And the last couple years, right, you know, I feel like the game of basketball slowed down for me, and I see it different. And I don't want to say I'm necessarily coaching different, but in my mind, you don't have to be that to have the success that you've had. And, you know, last year we were 8-21. The year before that, we were 13-17, which is my 2 worst records. So I'm conflicted with that statement of, you know, when did it slow down or should it slow down? Because right now, I'll tell you, this thing is getting ramped back up.
I appreciate that, and I feel you.
We will lead the country in fouls, I'll tell you that.
Speed it back up, Coach. Go full steam ahead. Thank you.
Does that include scrimmages also? Close scrimmages?
Yeah, man, absolutely. We're gonna foul, and I
experienced that.
I hope the coaches coming in don't want to shoot the 1-and-1 at 7, because that could be at the first 4 minutes.
We got anything else for Coach? Bashir, Coach Mason, you there, Coach?
Yeah, I'm here, man.
Okay.
Before you turn my mic off, man, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate this, and you know, everybody who logged on to kind of hear my journey and be a part of this, and the questions, man, is all love. Appreciate it. In the chat, I'll put my contact information, email, and cell phone number. If guys want to reach out, don't hesitate. I do suck at the phone, just so you know. I suck at it, but I will eventually get back to you.
Appreciate it, Coach. Appreciate it. Our next speaker this evening is Amir Abdur-Rahim, head coach of Kennesaw State, a guy that I've had the pleasure of knowing for about 17, 18 years, going back to when we played against each other in college. And the one thing I can say about him when he played in college was, man, he was a competitor and a shit talker, and was great at it. But he backed it up. He was a 3-time all-conference player in the Southland of southeastern Louisiana. And he's doing a good job so far. Obviously for him, probably was a tough first year for him, but he is on track to getting Kennesaw State in a great rebuilding mode. So The show is yours, Amir.
Man, Ryan, I appreciate you, man, more than you realize. I think anytime we can come together and fellowship like this and learn from each other, man, obviously it makes us all better. So, man, thank you for putting this platform together for everybody to grow. I was serious when I said I'm sitting here listening to Coach Mason's story, man. And look, man, I hope I keep y'all engaged as I was listening to him. The first thing I say is, just kind of jump into it, man. I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised, with the exception of 2 years I spent in the Bay Area, in California. And, Ryan talked about, our days of playing in college and being a competitor. I tell you this, man, playing against his dad's team, the teams he had at McNeese State, they always brought the best out of you because they were really good, man. They were older, they were physical, they were competitive. And Coach Price, man, he had them dudes rolling. So, it's funny, like now being in coaching and I think about, the guys, that I played against, coaches and players. And man, I don't think like when I think about it, we weren't very good. Man, I don't know how competitive we were that first year, second year, but Coach Price's teams, man, they were good. I just remember they had this dude, Fred Gentry. And man, this dude was 6'8". Man, I don't think he had an ounce of body fat on him. Man, he may have been married, Ryan. I can't remember it now, man. I just remember thinking like,
he was married with about 3 kids.
That's what I thought, man. I'm just grown man, but those were fun days, man. But Ryan talked about being competitive, and in a sense, man, I really didn't have a choice. I'm one of 13 children, but in my household, it was 5 of us, and man, 2 older sisters, an older brother, and a younger brother. And my parents, man, they put us in name a sport, they put us in it, right? And the 2 that we probably did more than anything, obviously, was basketball. And we had a summertime was always track season, right? And so my dad, he wouldn't let any of us sprint. We all had to be distance runners, so it had to be 800 or better. It was no 400, no 200, none of that, And as kind of we grew up, I can remember asking my dad, I was probably 16 or so. I was in high school, and I said, yo, man, why wouldn't you let us do sprints? And, he said, man, because distance running, it builds competitiveness, it builds character, right? So, with that, man, that's where I got it from. It was just doing, name the sport, we did it. But then, man, we were all competitive. Both of my older sisters played, and they were good. And I don't think I started beating them until I was probably 14. And that's just because I got more athletic and stronger than them, but they were good. Obviously, my older brother, Sharif, played 13 years in the NBA. And I think when it really got to a point that I was like, okay, this is everything I do, it's going to be this way, is when he would come back home for the summers, and it was him, myself, and I have a younger brother who's about 3 years younger than me. He played at Detroit Mercy. So I'm at Southeastern, Reefs in the league, and my younger brother's at Detroit Mercy. And man, we would play one-on-one full court. It was Sharif's idea. It was no half court, and I mean it was real, and it was the rule was no posting up because Reef is 6'9". But somehow, some way, he was gonna get a post up in there, even if it was just driving you right, spinning back left, and man, that's a post up. Man, you can't put your back to the basket, But that competitiveness, man, it drove me, before I got to Southeastern Louisiana, man, I was a junior college kid. I spent 2 years out at Garden City in Kansas, and I remember my first year. We talk about turning points, right? And I'll talk about another one in my coaching career. But my first turning point as a competitor, a real competitor, I thought was my freshman year at Garden City. I played for a guy named Jeremy Cox, who's now an assistant at Stephen F. Austin. And, just like all of us, man, like I'm young, I'm hot-head, temper's terrible, and end up, man, probably my second week out there. Now I'm talking about going from Atlanta, Georgia to Garden City, Kansas. I don't know if any of you guys ever been to Garden City, Kansas, but the smell out there is awful. And I don't know anybody, man, I don't know him, to be honest with you. Like, I didn't get recruited out there. It was literally, I was supposed to go to Cheshire Academy for prep school. And 2 days before I left, my brother said, hey man, you gonna go to junior college. And I'm like, all right. Like, I was just ready to get out of Atlanta. But anyway, 2 weeks into being out at Garden City, me and Coach Cox had a little run in, and it was probably easiest for him just to say, hey man, you know what, man, we're gonna redshirt him, because you could only have 6 out-of-state guys anyway, right? I think we had 12 every year. He was gonna have 12 out-of-state dudes every year, but you could only play 6 of them on your rosters. I think it's still a rule out there in Kansas to this day. But anyway, but it was my first time ever not playing, right? And I remember, man, I probably sat in my room for about a day just trying to figure out, like, I remember calling my mom, like, I'm coming home. She's like, hangs the phone up on me. I'm like, the hell happened, man? I call her back, like, Ma, like, did you hear me? She goes, yeah, you out of your mind if you think you're coming back here. You better figure it out, right? And I sat in my room for about a day, just not knowing. And man, like, at the end of the day, I'm like, man, I know who I am. I know how I was raised, and then I started working. And, if it wasn't for that year, man, I think I would have had some success somewhere, but I don't think I would have been the player that I was. And so I go on to spend 3 years at Southeastern Louisiana, and I played for a guy named Billy Kennedy. And Coach Mason talked about the relationships, right? Like the people you meet along the way. And that couldn't be more true. Because when I was coming out of high school, before, this was before the COVID hit and they waived the test, or anything like that. But man, Coach Kennedy got the job at Southeast Louisiana. I don't think he had ever seen me play, and offered me a scholarship, and I was gonna go, right? And come back. I think I was 20 points short on my test, something like that. So again, fast forward back, man, by this time, my sophomore year of junior college, man, I had Dayton, Central Florida, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, where they both were, they were keeping me warm, if that's fair to say, right? But just from a loyalty standpoint, man, this dude was going to take a chance on me sight unseen, 2 years ago. So, man, I felt like it was only right that I ended up going there. But plus, I trusted him. But anyway, man, so played for him. And to be truthful with you, man, I had no idea whatsoever that I wanted to coach. Wanted to play professionally, ended up tearing my meniscus. No joke, man. I work out all summer. I think I was going to Belgium Greece, Cyprus, Greece. And man, I tear my meniscus about a month before I'm about to leave. And, now you got to figure it out. So I knew I wanted to kind of further my education. And so I actually went back to Southeastern. I should take that back. I played a year of semi-pro ball in the ABA. That's when they were trying to bring that back. This was before the G League, and it was fun, man. But I mean, it was kind of whatever. I remember being in Chicago, man. We played a game. We were supposed to get paid the next day, and man, we get a call the next morning at like 8 o'clock, and the GM is like, "Yo, man, y'all gotta be out them apartments by Monday." Just like hung up the phone, like that was it, So. My professional playing days were over with. But I remember that following year, man, I'm like, okay, I want to get into coaching, I want to get my master's degree. So I go back to Southeastern Louisiana thinking Coach Kennedy was going to be the head coach. They go to the tournament. He interviews for Tulane. He doesn't get it. He goes to Miami as an assistant. So Roman Banks, who is the AD at Southern University, stayed on staff with a guy named Jim Yarbrough. And I guess he had told Jim Yarbrough that I was supposed to come down and be a GA at the time. And I was just in Atlanta, man, working kids out just to do it. All right. Jim Yarbrough ends up in Atlanta somehow. And he's basically like, look, man, if you still want to do this, come do it. All right. And so I go down and I do it. And this is not to talk about anybody because Jim had big time success at Valdosta State, and he did a good job at Southeastern. But I was just like, man, if this is coaching, I don't want no parts of it, right? Like I'm good, you know what I'm saying? And so anyway, Coach Kennedy, I had been talking on and off to him, and I was like, man, Coach, you know, I want to finish my master's. I just, you know, man, I got to get out of here. You know, like I just feel stagnant. And he was like, well, look, if you want to come to Miami, I can get you a GA spot down here next year. I was like, okay, bet, let's do it. Well, I guess 2 months later, he gets the job at Murray State. And, you know, some of y'all might call me stupid, but he calls me and he's like, hey, look, I just got the job at Murray State and would love for you to come up here and be a GA. But look, if you had your heart set on going to Miami, man, I can still help you do that. And I'm like, nah, man, I'm rolling with you. You my man, you know. Now, I don't know if you ever been to Murray, Kentucky, right? I know Coach Long is on here, but man, if you would have shown me Murray, Kentucky before I took that GA spot, I would have been in South Beach. But it probably wouldn't have been the best thing for a young 24-year-old at the time. But anyway, man, I ended up going up to Murray State. My first year, you know, if you guys know Murray State, man, I mean, you walk in that joint and it's like Boston Garden with the banners, right? I mean, it is. Those people, they think it's Louisville, they think it's Kentucky. They expect to win every year. They period. Like, and it's no justifying if you don't win the championship, right? And so, you know, my first year up there, it was cool, man. I didn't really do anything coaching wise. Like my biggest thing was just spending time with the guys. I actually lived with two of the guys, and I lived in the gym with them. I would rebound, put them through drills. I mean, you name it. Like, I mean, they could call me whenever, man. It'd be 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. Some of them dudes would want to get in the gym and we do it, right? And but you know, I think we may have been 16 and 15 that year. And the next year we had two guys leave. Dusty May, who's the head coach at FAU now, and Chad Dollar, who's the top assistant at Georgia. They leave, and we hired Jamal Walker, who's at Grand Canyon, and Isaac Chu, who was at Grand Canyon last year. But anyway, and I remember that summer, man, like you'll hear me say this a lot, you know, run to people who tell you the truth, man. All right. Like, seriously, man, if there's one thing you can do in this profession, man, run to people who tell you the truth. And so Chu may have been there maybe about three or 4 months or something like that. It was like towards the end of the summer. And man, one day he just grabbed me. He goes, yo, man, you can be really good at this, but you can't be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You know, you got to commit to it. And I didn't know him like that, but I just remember looking at him like, you know, kind of like, all right. And I don't know, man, like, I've always been somebody that wanted people to tell them the truth, right? So, man, I was like, all right, cool. I started asking them questions like, what you mean by that? You know, what do I need to do better? Where am I not, you know, carrying my weight? And he was fortunate enough to share his you know, what he thought. The other thing is, man, you don't think about it at the time, you know, these are just, you know, guys that are like older brothers to me, but, you know, the guy sitting in the office to the right of me is Steve Prohm, who's now the head coach at Iowa State. You know, and Steve was an assistant for us at Southeastern Louisiana. And he would always say this, he would kind of say the same thing Chu would say, man. I was just like, all right, man, you know, because in my eyes, I'm still kind of looking at him like, man, this is Coach Prohm, man. Like, you know, this the dude, he was the best, man. We had a gym, but in the summer times, they picked the floor up, you know, so we had like a little auxiliary gym on the other side of campus. We called it the hot box. And Steve would literally roll the gun from the UC to the hot box. I swear it was a mile. Right? No joke. It was a mile. And this is how ignorant we were as young kids, is, you know, it's like, yeah, man, roll the gun over there, man. Right? Like, we ain't realizing like what he's sacrificing, what he's giving to us at the time, you know. But when I think about it now, the reason why we were good and why some of us had the careers we had was because we had guys like Steve Prohm, Roman Banks, that were selfless enough to give of themselves and their time to help us be great, you know. So that second year going into being a GA, man, I was just all in, man. I'm trying to figure out, all right, how to do scouts, man. I would sit in there and watch Coach Prohm write up his scouts on the board, and I'm OCD today because of Steve Prohm. If you walk in my office, my desk, my papers, they got to be a certain way. Like, I'm like that because of him. The way I do my scout board, is because of Steve Prohm, right? I wanted to be neat. I wanted to be sharp, all of that, because to me, like the presentation of it, you know, it engages the guys and they're locked in on it, right? But it's because of, you know, these guys telling me the truth when I was young, and helping me grow, man. Like it's because of where I am today. But fast forward through that, man, I get to the end of the year and you know how it goes. GA's up, Final Four comes. I'm trying to find an op spot somewhere. I think I made an interview with Kyle Green, who was an assistant at Northern Iowa at the time. And I think they ended up giving it to a former player. So I go back to Atlanta, and I remember taking my teaching test. I was going to work at Wheeler High School, where I went to high school, you know, and I was going to be the JV coach, and be an assistant on varsity. And I was going to try to work my way into college basketball like that, because at the time, man, I mean, we were loaded. I think that was like JJ Hickson, DeQuan Jones, some of them other dudes. We had dudes, you know. And man, I'm sitting in the Virgin Islands at the airport at my younger brother's wedding, and I get a call from Coach Kennedy, and he goes, "Hey, Jamal Walker left to go to Ohio." He goes, "Man, if you want this job, it's yours." And I'm kind of like Bashir was with Coach Hurley hit him with, "Yo, man, you gonna come back and be the head coach." I'm like, hold on, man. I wanted to just be the ops guy. I don't know if I don't want to do that. Yeah, you know, because I'm like, I don't know it, right? And so you'll hear me, guys have heard me say this a lot. There's something to be said about guys who take the proper steps to get to where they go. Now, at the same time, man, when you're kind of forced into a situation or given or being blessed with a situation like Coach Bashir or myself in this situation, man, you got to take it and roll, right? So I'm like, yeah, let's do it. But I told him like this. I said, man, hire me in August. All right. Don't hire me now. Just hire me in August. Because I wanted to finish my commitment to the guys at Wheeler that I told them I'd be there all summer. But then the other thing that I did, man, I went everywhere on my own dime, right? And watched kids, and, you know, I was recruiting, right? Without being on there. That wasn't like, they wanted me to actually come so I could be on the road. I'm like, no, I'm gonna stay here, and, you know, I'm gonna do it this way. So, man, I get into it, you know, my first year, man, I don't know nothing. You know, all I know is be in the gym with these dudes, right? Second year, I kind of grow, you know, but I tell you what was crazy, man. My second year, you know, we lived in the gym. I'm talking about lived in it. I mean, I was in charge of the guards, and man, we were fortunate enough to have some really good players. We ended up having this one kid named Isaiah Cannon from Biloxi, Mississippi, that it was, in my eyes, it was no way he should have been there. Like, I'm like, man, why is this dude not at Ole Miss or Mississippi State? Literally, like, that was my thought. And man, we go to the tournament, we beat Vandy in the first round. And I'm gonna share this story with you guys, this part of it, and then I'll kind of blow through everything else that I've been through so you can ask questions. But I remember going to, after we beat Vandy in the tournament, and no, this is no joke. This is the year Butler goes to the Final Four. We are a bucket away. I really believe this. It's us or Butler, right? Whoever wins that game is going to make a deep run because of the way the tournament had failed that year. So, man, we beat Vandy on a buzzer beater, and it's us and Butler. We end up losing by 2, okay? Now, my first thought, I should say all of our first thought is like, man, we just won the league. We won like 31 games, man. Coach is about to get a job, man. We out of Murray, Kentucky is how I'm thinking, right? Like, we got to get out of here. Man, Coach gets a couple people interested in him, but he doesn't budge, man. He doesn't take a job. And I'm sitting there like, man, come on, man. You know, like, what you doing, man? Get us out of here. You know, that's what I'm thinking. But this is being young and dumb, right? And so the next year we come back, great team, we win the regular season, we get beat in the conference tournament, okay? And I remember, man, like sitting there in the springtime, and I'm like, man, we just won the league back to back, man. They got to be giving us a raise. Like, it goes back to what Coach Mason said, you know, don't chase money, don't do things based on money in this business, right? If it doesn't make sense, I should say that, right? And But man, I'm just sitting there like, man, they ain't giving us no, I'm salty. Like I'm young, I'm dumb. I'm telling you now, I'm young and I'm dumb. And I'm on I just, I think I was 28 at the time. And if you said to most 28-year-old coaches in the country that you would have been to the NCAA tournament, you would have won 2 league championships at the age of 28 as an assistant, most of them were like, man, I take that every day and I run with it. Well, I ended up leaving Murray, being on the road, going to Georgia Tech to take a director of player development spot. Okay. Now I didn't know at the time, right? But this is what I'm thinking about. And I share this with you because I would always tell you guys, man, put a premium on winning, right? If you can be somewhere and you're winning, it's nothing better to put on your resume than, man, I've been here, or I've been here all of this time. And this is the success that we've had, right? Well, I end up going to Georgia Tech as the director of player development, not really even understanding what the role was, right? But all I was thinking was, man, I think I may have got a $20,000 raise, which I think at the time, man, that might have been, between $600 and $800 more a month. But I'm like, I'm back at the crib and it's Georgia Tech, right? That's what I'm thinking. Man, I'll never forget being at Georgia Tech, man, and it gets to like December. And my job every day in practice was to like keep the stats. And it was a whiteboard that we had in our locker room that had wheels on it. And man, I would roll this whiteboard down the hall every day to the practice gym, keep the stats, and I would roll it back to the locker room. So in a year's time, I go from being on the court, being on the road, having a real voice in what we were doing to literally like, man, and the way compliance was at Georgia Tech at the time, they were sitting over there like, hey, don't say nothing. You can't be teaching. You can't be coaching. You know what I'm saying? But I'll say this, keeping that whiteboard every day for 8 months, man, was humbling and motivating. I mean, because I would tell myself, the next opportunity I get to be on the road, to be on the court, man, I'm a crush it. Like I'm gonna go at it every day. I'm not gonna take it for granted because I took being an assistant at Murray at the time. Truthfully, I took it for granted, right? So I wasn't gonna make that mistake twice. So I leave Tech, get an opportunity at the College of Charleston, and I think at 29 or something like that, man, I was a recruiting coordinator. Not that I don't even know if those titles matter, man, to be honest, but at 29, it mattered, right? It's funny like how the things that matter to you when you're young, as you go through the business, you realize, man, just work, right? Just work, put your head down, focus, be organized, all of those things. And we had pretty good success our first year. We actually made it to the championship game of the SoCon. But I mean, we ran into Davidson 3 times that year, and I mean, they were really good with Jake Cohen, Demond Brooks, kid Tyler Kalinowski was a freshman. I think he ended up being ATN Player of the Year as a senior when they left. But spent 2 years there, left there, went to Texas A&M, and again, I talk about my relationship with Coach Kennedy because I probably don't get an opportunity to be a Power 5 assistant at 32. If it wasn't for my relationship with Coach Kennedy and going to Texas A&M. And, going down there, it was really good because the 4 years I was there, we made postseason 3 years. I really believe we would have made the tournament my first year. Daniel House, who's with the Rockets now, he breaks his foot the second to last conference game of the season at Florida. And man, we didn't have time to adjust to not having our best player. And we get beat by Alabama, we get beat by Auburn in the SEC tournament, and we literally they took Dayton before they took us because Dayton had beat us in Puerto Rico earlier in the year. But then the next year, man, we rolled, like win an SEC championship, go to the Sweet 16. The number of guys that ended up being pros off of those teams. The following year, we kind of had a down year, but we lost Daniel House, Alex Caruso, and Jalen Jones, who were, 3 soldiers. These dudes were, they were everything for our program. But then from there, the next year we bounce back, and get to the Sweet 16 again. But that year right there was probably the most fun I had coaching because of how it went, man. We started out, man, we got to as high as 5th in the country. We were 11-1. We rolling. Our guys get the big head. We don't pull them back in, or I shouldn't say we don't. We weren't successful pulling them back in. Man, we start out the SEC 0-5. And I mean, we just doing, you know, our guys are lost, you know, but man, Coach Kennedy is one of these dudes who he's never too high, he's never too low. Dude is just, you know, he never, I mean, days I want to come in there and, man, drop every cuss word you can think of, man, the dude is in there like, all right, man, this is what we got to get better at. And it was the reason why we went 9-4 down the stretch and we make the tournament. And, you know, we beat Providence in the first round, and we were the first team to ever beat Carolina in Charlotte in the tournament. And, I mean, we roasted them. We worked them. But it taught me something that, you know, man, you got to be able to enjoy that success, but pull your guys back quick because, man, we beat Carolina in Charlotte. We riding high. We got Michigan in the Sweet 16 in LA. We don't refocus quick enough to get on Michigan, and man, we go out to LA and get rolled. And that taught me, man, hey, whether you're assistant coach or head coach, be able to refocus your guys, right? Don't let them get too drunk on success, you know, especially when you got an opportunity to win even bigger than what you've been doing, you know. And so I had my 4 years at A&M were great. And I was fortunate, and after that, I was fortunate enough to leave, come back home again, but at the University of Georgia with Tom Crean. And I told somebody this the other day, they asked me what it was like working for him. And I think, you know, our business, man, is interesting. I always say, man, you know, when young guys ask me or whoever, man, I always talk about run your race, right? Run your race. No, like, don't pay attention to know what nobody else is doing. You know, I could tell you, and I'm sure some of you other guys have heard the same thing, but I couldn't tell you how many times I've sat in a gym on the road and I kind of always try to get a chair, you know, or get somewhere by myself so I can really evaluate the game. But like sometimes you don't have that opportunity, and man, it's like always funny to hear, you know, other coaches, you know, a coach might walk by like, man, like, I don't even know why he at, you know, Tennessee or wherever he is, man. Like I'm just sitting there in my head, I'm thinking like, man, why you even worried about him? You know what I mean? Like, why, like, that ain't your race. And so if you can stay focused on your race, focused on what you're doing, man, I think, you know, not only do you create longevity for yourself, man, but you put yourself in a circle or in a realm of people that can really help you grow, right? So, but I say this, and if I could tell you how many people told me not to take that job, but it's funny, Bashir, you talked about Chuck Martin. Chuck Martin was the reason why I went to Georgia, right? And I didn't know Chuck before this. I reached out to him, and, you know, I just said, Coach, man, you know, man, I'm thinking about this. This is where I'm at. And he said something to me. It sticks with me to this day. And he said, man, always when somebody's trying to give you advice or tell you something, he says, man, always think about who you're talking to, right? And he says, and ask yourself this question. And he says, now you may not be able to always answer this because you might not know that person, right? He said, because in our business, it'll be somebody you don't know want to give you advice, right? Or tell you what not to do. But he said, ask yourself, do they work like you? You know, he said, because they told me the same thing about not going to Indiana, but I know how I work. You know, I know who I am. I know who I am as a man. I know who I am as a coach and how I work and do my job, right? And so he was like, man, ain't nobody gonna put no expectations on me higher than I can put on myself. And I was like, man, I'm gone, like I'm good. That's all I needed to hear, right? Because I know how I work, right? And I was at this point again. I told you before, I need people that are gonna push me. I need people that are gonna tell me the truth. And so, man, I go to Georgia. And to be truthful with you, man, it's like getting your PhD in basketball in a year, right? Anything you could think of, the dude is thought of. Anything you hadn't thought of, he's thought of, if that makes sense, right? Like he is really, really insightful. I'm talking about the way he approached each guy's individual development, right? And then kind of molded it into what we do as a team. You know, he he didn't want position guys. He wanted guys that, you know, he wanted basketball players. You know, I remember thinking we had a big kid on our team named Derek Obeda. He's from Atlanta. And Derek, man, he played hard, you know, big physical post guy, rebounder, defender, man. And I'll never forget, man, he had Derek out there shooting threes all summer long. And I'm sitting there thinking like, yo, can we please work on a jump hook with this dude, right? And he, and finally one day I said, hey, coach, man, like, are you gonna let Derek shoot threes in the game? Like, absolutely. He can't play for us if he can't shoot, right? And he did, man. Like, did they ever go in? Man, no, not a whole lot, right? But his mindset was he has to improve as a player, right? If he's gonna be successful and be able to, you know, play at another level. And then I go back and I start doing like kind of my homework and my history. And you look at guys like Thomas Bryant, right? Who he got. And Thomas was good, but you know, Thomas, I think, man, he's about to get a big contract from the Wizards at some point. Either he may have got it last summer or not, he's gonna get it soon. But like his track record of player development. So for me, that 1 year at Georgia, man, was unbelievable. Just in learning the game, which, you know, I don't know if I get Kennesaw State if I'm not at Georgia, because in that time we had that year I was there, man, I was fortunate enough to be a part of the staff that recruited and signed Anthony Edwards, who was the #1 player in the country, you know, and if you know Atlanta at all, you know, it's very rare that the top player in the state, let alone the country, stays home, right? Normally our kids are going everywhere else but Georgia or Georgia Tech. So we were fortunate to be able to keep that kid home and be there. And so, which kind of, I think, helped me get the job at Kennesaw State. And last thing I say is this, man, we went 1-28 this year, fellas. All right, just so you know. And was it hard at times? Absolutely, just because of my competitive nature. But I'll tell you two things. One, man, I learned a hell of a lot, man. I always say this, but my best teacher, and I do believe this, the best teacher in life, man, is failing, right? Because you're able to see yourself in a space where you have to humble yourself and, all right, where do I have to improve? You know, some people say, you didn't inherit much. Man, it is what it is. Like, it was things I think I could have done better as a head coach that I will do better in the future. But if I would have done those things better or been able to see myself in kind of pull myself back at times, right? Because again, that competitiveness, it can work two ways, right? Like, man, I was so locked in at times, man, like I'm not seeing that, you know what, man, I need to pull back and keep my voice, you know, let my voice chill for a second and let my assistants, right, jump out there and coach more. But man, I'm like this on these dudes every day, not realizing that's not how they respond. Now you got to remember, I've been at really, really good programs, all right, with unbelievably competitive dudes. And so I'm figuring I want everybody to be that way, okay? I realized that the guys we inherited, they had been through a lot. And I didn't see that, right, until it was too late, you know. Man, we were playing, I thought, some of our best basketball at the end of the year. It didn't correlate to wins, but we were playing better. The second thing I'll tell you is this: it's on now, because I done learned. All right, we've done a good job. We didn't go away from our culture at all. We didn't go away from accountability one day. We didn't cut practice short when we was 1-25 or 1-26. We practiced every day. We got our work in of how it was going to be, because I wanted to know who was going to be here with us, right? Because it's not going to be for everybody, okay? And so the way I look at it now is not even about who we have coming in, or, you know, like I got a really good staff, y'all. Like, not that rankings and none of that dumb stuff matters, you know, but I was one of the guys, he walks in at the end of the year, he's like, hey, coach, man, you realize we got the 47th ranked best recruiting class in the country? And I'm like, no, I don't care about that stuff. Like, it is what it is. But he was like, well, coach, man, that's something to be said. He said, I don't think Kennesaw State has ever had a class in the top 150. And I started laughing, he started laughing, you know, but that's a testament to them. They do a great job. But I know going forward, I'm gonna be intentional about my relationships with my guys. I'm gonna be intentional about my culture every day, our culture every day. And man, more than anything, like Coach Mason said, man, like we gonna be all in, and if you're not all in, you can't be here. So that's my journey, fellas. It's been fun, and I'm here to answer any questions y'all have, man. Don't hold back. I'll literally answer anything.
Hey, Coach. So I'm just looking over here, actually, at your brother's career.
Yep.
If you look at before he got traded to, I believe, Portland from Atlanta.
Hall of Fame.
He was averaging 20, shooting a solid 48%. You see a big drop in his minutes the second he gets to Portland. Could you just give us a little insight, if you could, on what happened?
Yeah, like I'll tell you this, man, my brother and I, and this is good to tell your guys, right? Your players, those guys that that have aspirations of being pros, right? And this conversation came up when we were talking about, this was like when Carmelo, if you guys remember, he had kind of like that hiatus where, nobody would sign him, right? Or whatever it was. And I asked him this question, and he goes, man, it's kind of like, what happened to me a little bit. He says, man, when you're kind of done being able to do what you do, or when they feel like you are, you should have said it. He was like, man, the NBA, he's like, it's a business, and they move on, right? Like they move on. So the reason why he was able to stick, and stay in Portland, and you got to think he goes to Portland, they already got Zach Randolph, right? So they're investing in this young guy, right? And so the reason why he was able to kind of stay and stick was because of his professionalism. And this is what I'm saying you should share with your guys is that, man, you hear guys all the time talk about being pros. They don't realize that being a pro is being on time. They don't realize that being a pro is being able to handle your business, in class, in the community, right? Because in a sense, all people in the NBA want to know is, can they count on you, right? And if they can't count on you, right, there's no reason to invest that money, because that's what you are. You're an investment in the NBA. Absolutely. It's a business, right? So that, I think, more importantly than anything, the biggest difference was, the trades that the team that he ended up going to was Portland. They already had Zach Randolph, because I think if you go and you look at his time in Sacramento, his numbers go back up. But even there, he's no longer the first option. He's the second option, because I think they had Kevin Martin and maybe somebody else. So I think that's all it was. But I mean, I think he had Hall of Fame numbers, but before that, but I'm biased, man. So it is what it is.
Hey, Coach, Justin Bailey, Pitt State, man. How you doing?
What's up, Jay?
Hey, quick question for you. You mentioned that you learned a lot from this past year. Mm-hmm. That's definitely going to help you become a better coach, a better leader. Yep. Can you name the top 2 or 3 things that's going to help you be even better next year to lead your group?
Yeah, one I've got to be. I'm going to be more intentional with my relationships. I think as an assistant, the one thing as an assistant, you have that time, like Coach Mason talked about earlier, like he could spend that time with them dudes. As a head coach, man, you get stuff rolling across your desk. Like you'll have a to-do list. Like, man, I do a to-do list every day, right? It's just my OCD. I have to do it, right? But if you look at this, I only was able to mark off 2 things, because I get to the office today, we got our guys coming back in. I get 4 things come across my desk that got to be done, and I don't get to this stuff, right? And so as an assistant, I had time to spend time with my guys, right? Like I could go to the dorms, I could sit in there, I could take them to dinner, right? Or take them to lunch, or I could go over to the cafeteria for lunch. As a head coach, man, I'm telling you, man, I had times where I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go over and have lunch with the guys today. And say if lunch was gonna be at 11:45, Jay, at 11:30, I'll get a call like, hey, coach, we need XYZ, can you help us with this? And now I'm out of pocket for the next hour, but instead of saying, no, look, I can come over there at this time and do it if that helps you, but I got lunch with my guys, right? Or whatever it may be. I've got to be more intentional about those relationships. So that's one. And then the second thing is from a defensive standpoint, or just basketball standpoint in general, like I'm gonna be more of who I am, right? I think one of the things that I fell into a little bit last year was I liked the stuff that we did at Georgia so much offensively, man, that like I wanted to do it. Last year we didn't have the personnel, like we didn't, right? So I should have, and I knew it too. That's the part right there that I'm mad at myself about. I knew we didn't have the personnel to do the things that I wanted to do, but I was committed to, this is how we're going to play. These are the things we're going to do. And when a kid, if a recruit came to watch us play, I wanted them to see how we were going to play and the freedom that he was going to be allowed to play with. So I was committed to that. Man, I think, man, maybe we could have won, 4 more games, 5 more games. But I'm like Coach Mason, man. Look, man, 11-21 is 11-21. 5-23 is 5-23, right? Like, man, I want to eventually be in those. I want to be in those big games, right? I want to be playing March 9th or March 10th in the ASUN championship game, right? So, I was committed to, playing how we were going to play once we had the personnel to do it. So those would be the 2 areas of just being more myself, between the lines.
Gotcha. I appreciate that, man. Always great hearing you speak.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you.
Coach, this is Jordan Ingram,
What's up, Jordan?
at Covenant College Prep.
Yep.
I had a question. So, like with last year, like obviously it was a rebuild year. How did you kind of make sure that you kept morale to a certain level? Because, in a situation like that, I kind of was in a similar situation like last year when I got to be an interim head coach. And it's like, you really feel like every day it's a struggle trying to keep buying somewhat, so that guys don't completely tank it. Like, what were some things you kind of did?
The day when I had my press conference, the one thing that I said in my press conference was that our guys were going to have an example, right, of what a man should look like and how he should work every day, right? And so, like, again, I come from a big family, man, and I've seen my mom and my dad struggle, right? And so even when things weren't in our favor, man, my dad, he got up and he went to work. You know what I'm saying? He got up and he put his these old boots, man. And I don't know why I remember these, but he put his brogans on, man, and he went to work, right? And so, like, that's something that I've always carried with me. So, anytime adversity hits, right? Like, I mean, it's not about what happens, it's about how we respond, right? So I thought, to be truthful with you, Jordan, man, we had about 3 times, man, where I thought we were ready to turn the corner, right? And as a group. And then, man, literally, I lose my freshman 4-man who's leading us in rebounding. He's our toughest guy, right? He's our toughest dude. I lose him for the year, okay? We get to conference, all right? Second game of conference, we lose to North Florida on a Thursday, Stetson at home on a Saturday, and man, we right there. It's probably 7 minutes left in the game. I think we may have been up 3. My freshman point guard who's starting for us blows his knee out, right? So anything that could have happened, right, from that anything that could have went wrong, it went wrong. But I just remember when Terrell Burton, that's the point guard, when he went down, I just remember thinking, like, man, I'm not gonna let these dudes think down that Armani and Terrell are gone, that we can't be good enough, And so every day we went in there, man, it was like, look, this is the plan. This is how we're going about it. This is what we're doing. And to be truthful with you, it's like Coach said earlier, you can find out a lot about life in this game, man, right? So, and that's really what I did, Jordan, to keep morale up. It's like, all right, like one day, man, you're gonna have a little Jordan or a little girl looking at you like, what you gonna do? So what are you gonna do? How are you gonna approach this next day? How are you gonna approach the next practice? When the lights come on and it's game time, right? Like, man, hell, Liberty, man, they were so good this year, y'all. Man, they had 4,000 point scorers on their team, right? Like, no joke. Like, 3 and Mayo Baxter Bell, I think he ended up at like 900 something, right? But Caleb Holmesley, Scotty James, and Elijah Cuffey. Oh no, I'm sorry, not Elijah Cuffey. Giorgio Pacheco Ortiz, all 1,000 point scorers. man, we play these dudes at home, right? And I can see on their face like, man, we can't win this game. I say, hey, man, like this is the day before. And I'm like, hey, man, if y'all feel like that, let's just call Coach McKay right now, man, and tell him don't waste the trip, right? And they like, what you mean? Like y'all don't believe you can win tomorrow, right? But I told them if we do these things, if we're disciplined in these areas, man, we're gonna give ourselves a chance. And this is no joke. For about 32 minutes, man, we were pretty. No, I take that back. For about 20, 23 or 24 minutes, man, we were pretty disciplined. And then you know how I go, man. You get a little bit of success, man. Them boys think it's them, man. Maybe open that joint up quick, right? But it was a good teaching point, especially the next day in film is like, man, look, this is where we were. And then you point out this is where we lost it, right? And then from there, it was kind of that. So I was really coaching to life, man, to be honest with you, and how they respond to life to help keep morale up and help them keep pushing.
Thanks.
Yep.
Coach Amir, Timothy P, Missouri Western State. You just talked about like you making your team get confidence by still practicing the same amount of time, and of course having the 47 ranked best team. And you said it doesn't matter, and of course I know you really do mean that.
Yeah.
Have you planned on using this group's experience? Of course, you had tough times, so your guys built a level of toughness this year, losing games, but also coming back to work. Mm-hmm. How have you thought about using that to your advantage this year, of using those guys to be your voice of how it takes to win games at this level with the class that has a lot of that's coming in with a lot of expectation?
Yeah, Tim, that's a great question, man. To be truthful, it was funny. Man, when we were recruiting during the year, it's funny, man. Like I always say this, and I used to tell Coach Kennedy this a lot when we were at A&M. It's like, Coach, man, these dudes are smarter than we realize. Like we got to start giving them credit, for how bright they really are. And man, if it's one thing, and I'm not sure I would do it any different, right? Because I have a vision for where we want to go. But I think one thing that hurt us, right? Just so I'm just sharing this with you, is we ended up signing 5 early, okay? 5 freshmen early. And man, I believe those guys were counting numbers, They didn't realize, now we didn't oversign, right? Because they didn't realize that we were sitting there with 2 scholarships. We had 3 seniors and we were sitting there with 2. See, they're not thinking about the 2 scholarships that we're not using. All they're thinking about is, man, we only got 3 seniors. And I think that played a part into at times where we didn't have total buy-in, right? But to answer your question, there'll be times where we'll draw back on it because we still have 4 guys that were a part of last year's group. But each team, man, is different. That's something that I learned, at A&M. Is something that I learned at Murray State, is that even though it might be the same group of guys, that team still has to have their own identity, right? And their own voice, like their own swagger, you know what I mean? If that makes sense. It's almost like, man, the team, like I told you, we went to the Sweet 16 two out of the 3 years at A&M. And where we lost ourselves was after the first Sweet 16, that team never created its own identity, right? They were just hanging on what Caruso and House and Jalen Jones had done. They never created their own identity. So with this group that we have coming in, the biggest thing we've done, and are trying to do during this, this quarantine and things like that, is create a real bond with them, help them find themselves, but help them find an identity as a group, right? So they know who they are. But for Terrell Burden and Armani Harris and a couple of other guys, the thing I've already kind of started doing with them individually, right? Because you interact with each guy on their own, is, even though it's a new team, don't ever forget your experience from last year, because you know what a winning team should look like, because you guys won in high school, and you know what a losing team looks like. And you guys know what our downfalls were last year, right? You know what our flaws were. You knew, that we weren't as connected as we should be. So if you ever see that on this team or any team in the future, you got the responsibility to call it out.
Coach, great job, man.
Appreciate it.
One, I'm an all-in dude, man, and if I was playing for you, I'd be ready to rock for sure.
I appreciate that, Coach.
But so our paths have been different, right? You've had a lot of experience of going from place to place, and I often find myself wondering or kicking myself, wishing I had those opportunities. Do you think that was helpful, that you had a chance to bounce around, or you was overloaded with information from working with so many different guys?
See, man, it's funny you asked that question because when you were talking, man, like I almost feel like I wish I had only worked for a certain guy, right? So I knew going into this, like this is like, man, this is the formula, right? You talked about the formula earlier, like this is the formula. So there's a big part of me that wishes I could have, there's a big part of me that wish I would have never left Murray State, right? Because again, we were winning, man. Like we had it to a point where I thought, man, like seriously, we could have got it, maybe not because Kenneth Fareed was a monster, but I thought we could have kept it going and going and going and going. But I'll tell you this, working at all those different places and working for the different head coaches, it was a blessing because I think what I learned was what to do and what not to do, right? I learned early, man, that I had to be who I was, right? Like no matter what. I remember you saying earlier about, you had heard Danny, it was Danny, his voice so much that you had to, when you found your coaching voice, right, is when you were able to like grow and that team was able to buy into you. I learned that, man, at a young age at Charleston. It's just like you can't be anybody but you, because when it was like almost like when you tried to be somebody else, those guys could feel it and it wasn't genuine, right? So I always say I'm fortunate to be able to have taken the path that I did, even though if I could have maybe cut one of those spots out, but then at the same time too, man, it's a part of my journey, so I'll be honest with you, man, I'm envious of you. I'm not gonna lie, like, because in my mind, I'm sitting there thinking like, man, it would be just good to know like, all right, this is the way, and still learn and grow different things, but this is how we do it, so yeah, like it confused me at times, to be truthful with you, especially this year, because I'm like, man, I'm gonna take a little bit of this Murray and a little bit of this A&M and Charleston and Georgia and ball it up and let's go. And it wasn't me.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Coach E. Davis, what's going on, brother?
What up, E?
Oh man, I got my knot tied, Coach, and I'm hanging on. Would you say, have you ever seen the movie Blow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Boston George.
Yes, sir. So would you say Murray State was like Boston George on the beach in California? He should have just stayed there. I'm joking with you, Coach.
Before I answer that, I'm gonna say this right here. Hey, Daniel, I got you next, man. All right, I know you've been trying to jump in there, but you know what, man? Like, yeah, in a sense, right? Like, yeah, it was. But I say this all the time, man. When I think back on it, like I think about how stupid it was. Like I'm like, man, you don't lead a road and winning the, But to be truthful with you, man, like that year under Brian Gregory, man, like our staff was elite, man. Like it was really good. People don't realize how hard of a damn job Georgia Tech is, though. You know what I'm saying? So like, man, but I mean, we had Billy Schmidt on our staff, who was at Dayton, who's now in the NBA. Chad Dollar was on that staff.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, Chris Jacobs was our ops guy. He's like doing something in the Atlanta Hawks front office. We had a really good staff. Josh Pastorino, I think, is in the Dayton athletic department. Now we had a really good staff. But man, I think, that year being there, again, it allowed me to see something different. But it kind of goes back to what Coach Mason was talking about, man. It was like, really, it's like when the confusion started, you know what I mean? Because it's like, man, I knew what our deal was at Murray. We was going to guard your butt the minute you got off the bus, and it was the same thing really at Georgia Tech, just with different things in it. So, it was the Boston George moment on the beach where when you should have just been like, hey, man, like it is what it is, man. Like I done had a great run. Let me chill.
Right. Now, my real question was, with all the experience you had and the guys that you worked for, you mentioned that they were competitive and discreet, or not discreet, but meticulous about certain things. Not to rank the guys that you worked with before, but if you had to pick one attribute that you took from the guys that it could be any of them that you now have brought to you being a head coach and finding your voice and your niche, what would be one thing from a couple of those guys that you brought with you?
Yeah, what I took from Billy Kennedy, man, was, man, be faithful, to what you believe in, right? Never get too high, never get too low. We go 17-1 the year we get to the tournament at Murray. But I mean, we had a couple of games, man, we were down, 15, 16 at the half, when we had no business being down. And that dude would come in there and he'd just be talking to him like we were up 15 or 16. And I always thought it gave those guys a calming effect to go out in the second half and settle down and do their job, right? So that's what I would take from him. From Brian Gregory and Doug Wojcik, it would be preparation. Man, the Michigan State dudes, man, like I'm telling you, yo, man, I'd never done a scout until I did a scout for Doug Wojcik. I'm just telling you, right? I'm talking about it was, you better be on point, right? And you better know your stuff. And, and what that taught me was like, man, you better be organized. You better put your time in. Man, it would be times, man, I would watch, 5 games, right? And, man, we had to know, like, if you ran a certain play, I had to know how many times they ran it, how many times they ran it right, how many times they ran it left, what was the tendencies, and, was some of that stuff overkill? Maybe, but from a basketball standpoint, from a preparation standpoint, like it made me fall in love with like just preparing for the game. And I've never lost that, man. Like, it's my favorite part of it, outside of, seeing those guys develop and seeing those guys grow. I love to prepare, man. Yeah, I do.
I appreciate that.
Daniel, go ahead.
I wanted to comment. I know you talked about, keeping morale with your team. I'm here at Lipscomb as an ops, and, I witnessed, Kennesaw continue to play hard, throughout the year, no matter, through conference, how you went through conference, but, just testament to you and your staff, what you did, throughout the year. I just want to give you praise on that, but also wanted to ask you, that transition from being, a GA to an assistant, how was that, trying to learn how to recruit, what you did to prepare yourself to be an assistant in the, in the recruiting aspect of it, an ops guy, you're not allowed to do stuff like that. So just trying to prepare myself for that next jump for sure.
Man, that's a great question. And thank you for what you said to start it. Man, the best thing I think, if you want to send a sign of Sajala somewhere else next year, we'd be good with that too. All right, we don't want to have to face it.
If the one-time transfer doesn't go, you might be here for a while.
Man, that joke there is good. But no, to answer your question is this, man. And what I'll do is, if you don't mind, I won't even use the GA to an assistant. Like what I would use is, well, I will use my GA days, but I'll also use those days at Georgia Tech as the director of player development. And that was the thing, man, like okay, how can I stay engaged with the program and how can I help? And I remember walking into Chad Dollar's office one day, like, hey, look, man, this is what I'm thinking. I know you got all this on your plate and covering Atlanta is a monster. Man, I'm gonna hit all the high school coaches, all the AAU coaches, and make sure, man, we get every young kid in the state. We're gonna get them to football games, basketball games, right? So even though I couldn't call a kid per se, Daniel, I made sure, man, like I created I don't know if it's corny or not. Now I created a newsletter, all right, when I was at Georgia Tech that I would send to, the high school coaches and AAU coaches once a month. But then I also would do like a little play of the week every week, right? I go in my office, draw something on the whiteboard, I take a picture of it, and I probably had a group text, chat at the time of probably 25 to 30 coaches, right, that I would send it to. And I would say to them, like, man, if you don't want to get these, just let me know, I'll take you out. And all of them were like, nah, man, keep them coming, keep them coming. And at the time, I was literally in the mindset of, and I just want to build a bridge between Georgia Tech and the state, so these high school coaches and AAU coaches feel like they know us, right? Because a lot of times what I realized, for the Georgia schools, it was like, man, and I could be wrong, I shouldn't say that, but it was like it was a disconnect somewhere between, the grassroots coaches and the high school coaches and, the programs in our state, and I wanted to make sure them dudes knew, like, man, whatever you need, you got it with us. Well, what it ended up doing, man, was when I left to go to Charleston, man, and I was coming back to recruit, man, them dudes would be like, man, I miss getting them text messages with those plays, man. You don't want to do that. Like, man, I ain't got the time to do that shit now, you know what I'm saying? But what it did was even though like I had relationships with being from here, I think it cultivated and nurtured the relationships with those guys and those high school coaches. So now, man, when I got my chance to get back on the road, when I called a high school, it wasn't an unfamiliar person calling. It was somebody that they knew. And ultimately, like, man, recruiting it's how it's how you treat people, right? It's connecting with people. That's what it's about, right? And it's the difference between recruiting and evaluating. Okay, like the recruiting part of it is you have to be a people person. You have to treat people the right way. I'm like Coach Mason. I am terrible with the phone. Awful, like I'm terrible. But man, I try my hardest, and I don't go 100 for 100. But man, I get back to the majority of the people, right? Even now. But when I was an assistant, I was 100 for 100. Somebody called me, I was calling them back. If I was the player development guy at Georgia Tech and they wanted to come to a football, if they wanted to come to every football game, even if I just knew they was using us for tickets, yeah, man, come on. I don't care. Like, like I didn't think Georgia Tech football was that great anyway, but yeah, man, come on, come to the game, right? So I just think, man, in that role you're in now, you can still have value because you can really bridge a gap between whether it's grassroots AAU coaches, high school coaches, trainers, and get people, knowing that Lipscomb name. Like, and hey, man, always feel like, hey, if you want to come to practice, let us know. And obviously run it by Coach Acuff. But yeah, man, that's kind of how I approached it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Man, what's going on?
Rob, what up?
Nothing much. Being a part of a rebuild myself, just wanted to kind of get your mindset of how you've prepared your staff to kind of, really bring your crew from last year that you have with this high expectations of a highly ranked class. Have you guys talked about how you're going to handle that if some of the new guys come in and are more talented than the guys that were there in the past?
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, we have, and man, I'm like probably I'm probably too straightforward in recruiting sometimes, right? But I think it's only right. I don't want to tell a kid just what he wants to hear. You know what I mean? Like, for example, man, we signed a kid named Chris Youngblood, who I think has a real chance, man. Like to if he he got to be a little lucky, but he's a maniac when it comes to working. And he was technically like our highest rated recruit. And I remember, like, man, as we're right there ready to get him committed. And I said to him, and we got him committed in June, right? And I remember saying to him, like, now look, only do this if you short, right? And understand that, like, man, when you come in here, everything you get, you're gonna have to earn. Like, it ain't no handouts, like zero, right? Like, so it may not be somebody here that's good enough to beat you out or whatever it is, but man, you better understand, like, everything you get, you're gonna have to work for, And so I think setting that tone with them and then having the same conversations throughout last year with those guys that we had of, hey man, we're gonna play the guys that are doing what we asked them to do and the guys that are working hard, right? Like that's what we were, like, what it was about. So I think with the understanding that of already them knowing, like, man, this program is going to be built on competition. This program is going to be built on hard work. Them already understanding that kind of takes the pressure off of us a little bit of having to decide who's going to play. Because at the end of the day, who competes the hardest, who works the hardest, it's going to show, right? It's going to show. The thing I think what we try to do, Rod, on top of that is, man, help them create a bond to where, I don't even know if you can say it ain't about like not worry about playing time, because all of them are worried about playing time, but help them build a bond to where, man, no matter who's in, man, they want to see that dude succeed and be good and get and do what he does. You know what I mean? And I think we made some strides in that area, you know, even just over Zoom. You know what I mean? Like we had like themed Zoom calls, right? Like one of them was the first one was like, man, we set our core values, like we shared it with them, like, hey, this is what it's gonna be. This is what we're about. You know, so on and so forth. Hey, Ryan, can I share my screen?
Yeah.
I just so, because I mean, I write everything down, man. I need help, y'all, just so y'all know. But it says it's disabled, Ryan.
Hold on.
Okay.
Try it now.
Okay. Yep. So this is something we shared with them, like our first Zoom meeting, right? That we were able to kind of have everybody in it. These is just like our core values, right? But this is like, you know, I wanted them to know this day one. And this meeting was probably 20 minutes, man, 20 or 30 minutes if that, right? And really our, you know, one of the rules, like it might be our only rule this year, man, no energy vampires, man. One of my favorite books is The Energy Bus. If y'all hadn't read it, man, you should check it out. And it just talks about, you know, controlling your energy and, you know, keeping the people around you, you know, keeping their energy, you know, like up. And man, if they energy vampires, yo, man, you got to go over here, right? So we did that. Another thing we did, man, we talked about communication and the importance of body language. And we had a guy, he's a former Navy SEAL, guy named Mark McGinnis, who worked with our team at A&M. And he got on there and he talked about how important communication was for a Navy team, a Navy SEAL team, and how important body language was to complete the mission. And man, them dudes, they sitting there and their eyes are like this big as he's sharing stories. I think my favorite one was, man, we had Alex Caruso jump on one of them. And I told him this story of, you know, in 2 years of coaching Alex Caruso, man, we never had to coach his effort and we never had to coach his energy, right? And his attitude, never. Like in 2 years, I bullshit you not, okay? But what I shared with him, and I actually had Alex share with him, was like individual work ethic and how it drives team work ethic. And I had Alex share the difference between the summer going into his junior year and the summer going into his senior year. And to make a long story short, he didn't do nothing summer going into his junior year. Man, this dude, he would golf every day with his buddies in College Station. He played video games nonstop. When you got him in the gym to work, he worked, right? But his senior year, he was a maniac, like an absolute fool, right? When it came to working. And so when you see him out here, you know, tip dunking or throwing lobs to LeBron, it don't surprise me because of how he worked individually. And then when he started working individually, man, it just ticked everybody else up because he was our most competitive guy. And it bled over to our team. And so now our team work ethic started to become crazy. It was like, man, coach would be trying to cut practice short. And man, them dudes was like, nah, man, let's go 20 more minutes, man. Let's get this scrimmage in, finish the scrimmage, you know, or let's do special situations. Like this is like, now it's like, all right, man, it's their team, you know? So these are the things we try to share with them throughout this quarantine to help create that bond, create that culture. So they're not worried about who's playing and who's not. They're just rooting each other on.
Right. Any more questions for Amir?
I'll ask one. What's up, Coach?
What up, D?
Obviously, you know, everyone's talked about the tough year. If you knew now what you, or if you knew then what you would know now, what would you tell yourself when you took the job going into year one?
A lot, nah. Man, if it was one thing I'd have to tell myself, it would just to be, be patient, be intentional. Be patient, be intentional. That's what I would tell myself. Just because, again, I had this, the competitive side of me is like, man, I'm gonna get this job, man. We gonna get this thing jumping, and from day one. And the truth of it is, man, when I think back on the places I've been, man, it's taken time, to build championship programs. At Murray State, man, like again, they wasn't used to it, but it took us 3 years to read. Like people didn't realize we had to sign 12 dudes when we got there, initially. So it takes time, right, to reestablish that tradition, that culture that it took to hang all those banners in there. So in Kennesaw, we don't have a tradition of or a culture of winning championships, but to create it, like I know it takes time. So I would just tell myself to be patient, and be intentional. Ryan, I think that's it, man. I ain't trying to get off of this side, but I think that's it.
Yeah, I know it's getting late on that East Coast, man.
I'll be all right though.
Man, I appreciate you, Amir, man. I appreciate you a whole bunch, man. Appreciate it a ton. I was hoping a couple of these other guys, man. I know Brandon Chappelle was on here. It was at Lamar. I thought he might have had a little comment he wanted to say to you, but I don't
man,
know.
no, like, hey, Ryan, I'll tell you this, man. This is just for anybody that want to know, man. Like, Ryan, one, again, like I said at the beginning, this like the platforms like this, y'all, are really important, man. And to be able to get on here and fellowship and share, man, is really important. The thing that I would challenge all of us with, man, is, whenever things get back to, and they are ramping up, like Coach Mason said, man, but when they do get back to, in a sense, normal, man, don't forget, the bond and the learning and growing and things that went on during this time, right? Because if we're going to continue to push this game forward, man, we got to continue to stay in contact with each other. It's not always about, fellas. It's not always about, competition. I think that's the one thing our business, right? It pits us against each other at times, right? And yeah, we're going to be competitive, right? But man, the way we all create longevity is by helping each other, by making sure we build each other up, right? So as we go back to whatever normal is, man, if it's something that, man, you think, man, we might be able to use at Kennesaw, man, hit me, let me know. If you got questions about anything, I put my number in the chat earlier, man, hit me anytime. Like I said, I'll get back to you if I miss you. But man, just, we got to keep using, each other to grow, man. And again, Ryan, like I said, man, to be forward thinking like you have been with this platform is incredible, man. So keep doing what you're doing, because you're giving all of us an opportunity to be better.
Appreciate it, Amir, man. Thank you again tonight.
Yes, sir.
Again, I wanted to take the time to thank Amir and Bashir for both tuning in and giving us great perspectives on their programs and giving us their journeys into being head coaches. We'll be back on next week, next Tuesday, same time. I'll leave the chat open for another 5 minutes or so in case anybody wants to put in their contact information. Again, guys, thank you guys so much, man. Thank you guys a ton.
Thank you, Ryan.